Today on A Fool and His Money Are Soon Parted, we're going to continue our multi-level marketing series with a study done by a guy named Mike Beatty, so I'm calling this the Beatty MLM study. And first, the obligatory preface. None of what follows is meant to demean the character or the worth of any nomad on this network, past, present, or future. My critique is of the MLM model, which I believe to be essentially fraudulent. Why? Because it is based on the endless chain market, which is a non-diminishing market that is expected to expand infinitely and provides an unlimited income promise, all three of which are fraudulent claims. There is the pay-to-play requirement. There are entry fees, purchase quotas, costs related to marketing, education, motivational costs, and this constitutes most of the costs involved in one's involvement in the company. There is the recruiting mandate. If there is no recruiting, there is no reward. And then finally, there's extreme money transfer, which is characterized as more money being paid per transaction to an upline than to those who actually generate payments, who make the sales, right? Which is sort of the inversion of the way it is in a normal sales scenario. So, who is Mike Beatty and what does he do for a living? Well, Mike has a company that he calls Make Time Online. And what is this? Well, he is a small-time internet guru who has a system that he sells about how to make passive income and escape the ordinary. And he offers some stuff for free, et cetera, et cetera. He also has he has a YouTube channel with not very many subscribers. So like I say, the guy's pretty small-time. But I don't want you to commit the genetic fallacy. Now, remember the genetic fallacy, if you go back and look at the playlist for Radio, and I want you to consider the data that Mr. Beatty is producing, not who Mr. Beatty is. He obviously wants people to avoid MLMs and to buy his stuff instead and learn how to make money, in his view, legitimately. And yet what I want you to focus on are the actual findings in the Beatty study and not the person of Mike Beatty himself. He happens to be a British subject. I know that because I watched some of his videos and heard his fantastic accent. And this woman, whose name I believe is Sarah, is his significant other. So he starts out his study by arguing, with some justification, that the John M. Taylor 2001 study, which was also referred to as the letter to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, contained some flaws. And he points out what those flaws, methodological flaws, he points out what those are. Just to remind you, the John M. Taylor study, which was created in close cooperation with Robert L. Fitzpatrick, another person who I've mentioned in the MLM survey, and they found that 99% of the participants in MLM companies broke even or even lost money. So the result of Beatty's study, which he believes is more accurate, was that 92.3% of participants actually lose money. So there is a flaw in Beatty's own study, and that's that he doesn't explain how he came up with the number 167 MLMs. In fact, worldwide, there are almost 300, according to other sources. Nevertheless, Beatty limits his findings to 61 of those 167, and that is those who produce income disclosure statements. Next to his credit, Beatty identifies several hurdles, methodological hurdles, and he describes the workarounds. Well, for one is that in many of these income disclosure statements, there are participants who are hidden. Not every IDS makes it clear who is and who is not included in those numbers. So what's his workaround? Well, he went through and he actually found which one of these hide members, and he found that only 3 of 61 statements did not explain who was included in their statistics. And the average quote unquote success rate of those MLMs was 8.8%, which is reasonably close to the overall 7.7% success rate that he finds in his study, so he included them. So, what's another methodological hurdle? Well, there is a limited number of MLM IDSs. They are, in fact, not required by law. Many people claim that they are. They are not. To the extent that they're a device that a company might use to limit their exposure to class action lawsuits, you might say that law is involved, but the law, in fact, does not require MLMs to publish income disclosure statements as they do for franchises, for example. MLMs are exempt from franchise law. So it is a limited number, but nevertheless, it is 61. This is an assumption, an interesting assumption that he makes, and I think that it has some merit, so I wanted to tell you about it. He assumes that companies that don't publish an income disclosure statement might produce worse success rates. I mean, if they were better, why wouldn't they publish them? It would be in their best interest to say, look, our success rates are better or much better than all of the others who produce income disclosure statements, so you should join us and not those other bozos. So there's a major methodological hurdle, and that's that it's difficult to calculate expenses that are not included in the IDS. So for the purposes of the Beatty study, he considered only the following: the total cost to join, the startup costs, the monthly sales and payments, that is, that the person incurred themselves, and other monthly requirements. Notably, he did not consider travel expenses, additional training, buying personal development, things like that, postage and packaging for those who need to stock inventory of physical product, and other marketing expenses. Why? Because those numbers aren't published anywhere, and distributors are not required to produce them. He also did not consider distributors in the second year and beyond, for whom you'd have to subtract costs to join and startup costs. So that's a shortcoming of his own findings. So the findings that I'm going to summarize in the subsequent slides are per year, and this is assuming 1 year. So one flaw is that this is not including distributors who have been in for more than 1 year, of whom it is widely known there are not many, certainly not the majority. So I've divided them into 5 sets of 10 and one of 11 to show you all 61 that had income disclosure statements. And I'm just going to scroll through these as slowly as possible so that you can take note. Just note that the first column is the name of the company. The second column is the average expense in the first year, right? And the final column is the percent that lose money, not break even, not make money, but lose money. And we'll stay on that for a while. Here's the next page. Now you'll notice that there are in all of these, at least each slide, there are some numbers, some MLMs with names that you might recognize. There's Mary Kay, for example, and some that you may not know of, like Life's Abundance, that I had certainly never heard of. Here's another one on the list. Again, the middle column is average expenses, and the right-hand column is numbers that lose. We're almost done with these. This is the second to last slide. There's Rodan and Fields there, which is a one that's fairly well known. 31 Gifts, which is fairly well known. And it's also sort of interesting to note that the startup costs for all of these are fairly consistent across the board. Some of them are wicked outliers, like, for example, look over here, Zingular, however you pronounce that, it's quite high. one of the new ones, which is the subject of a video that I might produce in the future, at least will appear in some future videos, called iGenius, has inordinately high startup costs. So here are the main findings summarized of the Beatty study. That range of MLM members who lose money across the 61 MLMs that actually publish an income disclosure statement ranged between 72.5% and 99.91%. The total average across all 61 MLM is 92.3%. And he actually did some more math, and I'm glad that he did this because whatever your definition of a livable wage is, he arbitrarily chose $30K per year as a cutoff point, and found that 0.56% of members earned more than that in any MLM. So that's really where, when we talk about livable wage, clearly more than 99% of participants are making a livable wage in this endeavor. So I repeated this slide for a reason that I'm not remembering right now, but I want you to keep this number in mind and compare it to the John M. Taylor, Robert Fitzpatrick number of 99%. You might also consider the self-reported data from the AARP, where the self-reported failure or lose rate was break-even rate was 75%, 74% I think was the actual number. 25% actually admitted to losing money, and 25% thought they made money. Again, self-reported data, unknown if these people actually did balance sheets or did any of the calculations such as Beatty did in this study. So what are the conclusions? When you are considering any quote-unquote business opportunity, I want you to do the following. First, Google, is company X an MLM? 2, if it is, ask whoever recruited you to produce an income disclosure statement. If they cannot, because there is none, run, do not walk in the other direction, because that's a huge red flag. And here's what I'm going to close with. If there is an income disclosure and you decide to join that MLM anyway, that's on you. So that's all I've got for you for this week. I will see you in the next episode.